Hey there. In this video I will show you how to create a simple pose animation for the weapon of your choice. In this video I'll be using my MK14 model. So to start we go to Workbench and we have to set up some files. The main basic ones are workspace files and all the related files to that workspace. Because my rifle inherits from M21 prefab, uh, I had been using the vanilla animations for M21, and because of that, I'll be using that workspace exactly. So we need to find that workspace. All the workspaces for animations are have suffix of AW, so we search for m21.aw, and we right click on the file and overwrite in my mod name. Okay, we go to that file, which is under my mod, assets, weapons, rifles, and workspace usually. And you have the file. What you will do now is right click on it and navigate, show in Explorer, which will open the folder inside of your Windows Explorer. And what you want to do is to delete the meta file associated with that workspace. And I would suggest to rename the file to something like the prefix of your mod with underscore. And that way we can differentiate that workspace from the vanilla one. With this file created, you go back to Workbench, and what you want to do is right click on it and register and import. What it will do, it will regenerate the meta file you just deleted with correct IDs for the Workbench to use. With that created, what we want to do, you can open the workspace, and inside that you can see the animation graph, all the animations that are associated with this weapon. Inside the player animations, as well as the weapon animations that are associated with this weapon as well. And they are listed in here. So what you want to do now is to copy those, I'm sorry, not copy that, but override those files from the base game and rename them and re-import and register them, just like you did with the workspace itself. So we have m21 player.aci. We will look for it. And when we found it, we just click overwrite in our mod, just like we did with workspace. When we do that, we can do the same with the weapon file as well. Yeah, and overwrite in our mod. Okay. After doing that, we go back to the Explorer, and we will now do exactly the same what we did with workspace, which is delete the meta files, and just for the sake of it, rename those files to add the prefix we wanted. We added with workspace. So after that, we can go back to the workbench itself, go back to assets, weapons, in our mod, of course, workspaces, select those files we just copied, we just override from the base game, we press write and register the input. Okay, after we do that, we go back to the workspaces folder in our Explorer of our mod. And what we need to do is to open the workspace file with the text editor. Sorry, I will just close everything. And now we can open the workspace file again. This is what the file looks like. It has references to the animations of player and weapons. As you can see, currently it points to the vanilla ones because we renamed our files and re-imported them again with different meta files. So what we need to do is to open the meta files for those overridden files, like so. and copy the name with the quotes, everything except for the name. We copy that, go to the workspace and replace the player animations, and we do the same for the weapon animation as well. We copy the name and replace inside the workspace file and hit save. We can right click on the workspace file inside Reforger and re-import. It should now point to the correct files, and as you can see, it does. So now with that done, we can go to Blender. Okay, we are in Blender now. I'll be using the Blender 3.1.2. I don't know if this is the official version supported by. I am using that and it works just fine. What you will need for this animation tutorial, you will have to install the official Enfusion plugin for the Blender. You can locate this file on, when you go to the Steam, you right click on Arma Reforger tools, you go to properties, local files, view the local files. It will open the Arma Reforger tools folder inside the Windows Explorer. And then you can see there is a Blender folder. It contains the plugin itself for the Blender. You can install it as any other plugin in Blender. And then you will have Enfusion Blender Tools data, which is all the profiles that are used by animation exporter. I will just unpack it again. Not like that. Unpack it again. Okay, and now we can go back to Blender to set up the plugin. What we do is to go to Preferences, and if we installed the Enfusion tools, just find it like so. And what you have to do is to put the path to that Enfusion Blender tools data, which contains all the profiles for the animation. You have to copy the path and put it inside this box of the Enfusion Blender Tools plugin configuration path inside the add-on folders. When you do that, all the animation profiles should be available to the exporter. You can save preferences. Yes, by that. Okay, what we will do now is we will open the Bohemia template for skeleton for animations, or in particular the fixed fixed version that was kindly provided by Reinhardt. So big thanks to him. We can open it, and this is what the blend file will look like. Don't get scared by all those texts. You can easily hide them by going into the viewport overlays and checking the text info. What you can also do is toggle the X-ray if you want to see the model of characters and the weapon more clearly. Okay, now to change the pose, you can go into object mode, select the pose you would like to change, then go into pose mode, and then you can adjust the position of all the bones that you want. But as the basic ones like hand and weapon position, you can change by modifying the position of the helper empties, which look like this rounded things. I don't know what they call it. I'm sorry, but they all have names. So for the weapon itself, it is prop.r, which stands for, I don't know, prop and right hand. And you can see it can be easily adjusted. The same helper exists for the hand animation, hand pose, which is exactly that. And as you can see, it has the name of hand -ik L, which stands for the position for left hand. It can be easily adjusted. Before you go to all the animation stuff and changing the pose of this weapon to for the weapon of your choice, I suggest exporting the field or the sample one and see if everything works correctly. And you do that by going into the Enfusion Tools exporter, which is located under here on the top bar menu of viewport. You go in Enfusion Tools, export and export animations as .txa files. And you can see this is the normal Blender export menu, where you go to the particular path of your choice. And then on the right side, you have all the options for the Enfusion TXA exporter. What you will need to do is set up the folder with export profiles again, which we have set up in Enfusion plugin earlier. It is the same path, but you don't have to put it manually. You just click on it and it should point you to the path that you have set up earlier. And when you do that, you can see that those profiles has been assigned to all the animations in here, but sometimes they do not match what should be in here. What should be in here is for the IK animations, it should point to 501-IK. For the offset animation, it should point to 101 full body ABS. And for safety animation, it should point to 502 IK right hand animation profile. I'm sorry. And when you have set up those profiles, you can set up the correct path. I will just put the path inside my mod folder. Inside the folder where we have workspaces for our animation, I created a TXA folder. I will just copy the path, put the path inside the Blender menu path, and then I will just hit export. It can take, depending on the animation complexity, it can take up to 4 minutes. Oh, and you can see the Enfusion just hit me with an error, which should not happen. It has profile correctly set up. Okay, I just did it again, it worked. So I don't know what happened. Okay, now we have all those animations files that has been generated from the exporter inside that TXA folder which we talked earlier. And now what we do is go back to Workbench. Okay, now we're back again in the Workbench. What we will do is to go back to Workspaces folder, and we go into the newly created TXA folder with all the animations that have been exported from our Blender exporter. What we will do is select all those files and register and import. What it will do, it will create all the animations files that are readable by the game engine. And as you can clearly see in the viewport or in the Windows Explorer, those files have been generated with meta files as well. Now what we will need to do is to go back to our player .asi animation file, which we had overridden at the start of this tutorial. We will select those files and edit them. We need to edit them to change the references to point to our newly created animations instead of the vanilla ones. And we will need to change the 3 main animations, which I will put on the screen somewhere. But what we need to change is all the animations which we had generated, which is IK animations, which is a pose animation, offset animation, and safety animation. and we can open those meta files in text editor because we will need the correct naming resource names for those files. So in the ASI, we search for IK, and we have found it. There are two of those resources. I mean, there is one resource used for two animations. Uh, for every animation, there is two versions of it. There is ERC1 and PNE1. ERC1 stands for erected, which is character standing, and prone, which is PNE, which is prone, which stands for character proning. We will need to change the resource reference. So we go to our ikanm.meta. We copy the name of this file and we replace this in the ASI. And we do that for all the files we have generated, which is three animation files. So for offset, we do the same. We copy the name. We go to player.asi. We search for offset, ik offset, and we just replace the name. And we do the same for the safety. We copy the safety name from the meta file. We go to the ASI file. We search for safety, and we replace the file in this, and we replace the name in this file as well for this animation. I did replace only for the erected animations only for this tutorial, so don't worry about the prone. When we do that, we just hit save. We can go back to the workbench and hit reimport on the player.asi. Reimport. And what we will do now is assign those animations to the correct places in the prefab of our weapon. So to do that, we edit the prefab of our weapon. It will open the prefab editor, or should I say world editor. And in the prefab of your weapon, you need to change the animation inside of two components of your prefab, which is SCR weapon attachment storage component, which has the reference to the IK animation of your weapon, and weapon animations component. We will start with weapon attachment storage component. We scroll down until we see the animation IK pose. And as you can see, it currently uses the vanilla M21 IK animation file. And what we will do is to change that to point to our newly created animation for our weapon, which is sample weapon 01 IK anim. When we hit OK, and what we will do now is go to weapon animations component, and we can in here we can change the player animation .asi inside the anim injection category. So we change anim instance. We set it to our newly created player.asi with our prefix. We hit OK. And after that, I suggest clicking force save because it sometimes does not change in prefab, and even sometimes I had to restart the entire workbench. Okay, so we can load our world, and as you can see, it now correctly reads the sample weapon IK pose instead of the M21 vanilla one, which we had earlier. That's why it looks like the weapon is moved back a bit and the hand position does not match with the weapon. But with that, we can see clearly that the replacement of the animation worked. Okay, now that we know that the sample animation works for our model, we can make some adjustments in the pose itself to better suit our model of choice. And in this case, we will be adjusting the pose animation for the MK14 model. We do that by going back to Blender and to make few adjustments. We firstly have to replace the sample weapon model with our model, and we will do that just now. Also, disclaimer: big thanks to Reinhard for showing a simple tip on how to replace this model. So big thanks again. We can open another instance of Blender with our model in it, our model of weapon. This model should already be set up in game and stuff like that. We can open this model. I just merged everything together to a single mesh. You just don't have to do that, but I did for simplicity. And what you will do is to add a simple empty. You can do that by pressing Shift A, empty, and plane axis. And we have to position the plane axis of this empty on the world origin, which is 0, 0, 0. And we can just cursor to world origin and then selection to cursor. And with that in place, we can now go back to our mesh. We can go to object properties, and under relation tab, we can select our newly created empty. You can also change the empty name under here. We can change it to something like weapon.center. And you can see that the relation is created correctly. We can select everything, press Ctrl C to copy, and then we go back to our Blender instance with our animation, and then we can go to layout. We can press Ctrl V, and it will copy our model to this blend file. We can select weapon center, and if you grab it, you can move it like so. But what we will do now is make it related to the right hand of our character. And we do that by going again back to the object properties, to parent, and we search for child, right hand prop. And we click that. When we do that, we can see that the model snapped to the position of the bone in the armature. We can go back to animation. Oh, well, actually, let's go back to layout and let's delete the old mesh of the sample weapon. Everything? Oh, okay. We did everything, right? So we go back to animation tab. We can go back, we can click on the pose. We can select pose mode. And now we can adjust every position in this, in the animation for the weapon. So we select the prop.r, which we talked earlier was the weapon. We can just move it a bit forward. We can select the hand animation. We can rotate it a bit with pressing R and rotating it. We can move it like so. It will involve a lot of tweaking, checking in game and tweaking again, but we will just do a quickie one. A side note, as I said earlier, these are helpers for hands, but I'll move it like here. You can see there are also helpers for all the fingers on the hand. So when you press this one for the pinky one, you can either rotate it, press R and rotate, and you can also lock the rotation axis by pressing R and say X, or R and Y, or R and Z, which will, open the finger. And you can also press S for scaling. And scale controls the two last segments of each finger. So we can, do that. And when I press S, you can clearly see that the two last segments of the fingers of each finger is moving. Okay, so that was just a side note. We can place the hand position correctly to match our model, but we will do it roughly because I don't want it to be long. It is already long. And we will just move the, the left hand exactly like we did with the right hand. We can rotate it a bit. We can move the fingers. I'm not an animator, so excuse me for doing everything slowly and not by the book. Okay, we now have like a semi-good position for our weapon. And we do exactly what we did earlier. We go to Enfusion, export as TXA. We should have everything set up correctly. Just please make sure that you have those exact profiles for these animation files, which is IK, 501 IK, offset and 101 full body ABS, and safety, which is 502 IK right hand. Then you just hit export and wait. It shouldn't take long. And it exported. We can see it on the bottom. Then we go back to Workbench, and the pop-up should appear that 3 resources successfully imported, which indicates that those 3 anim files have been regenerated. And we can start the game, and we can check that our animation looks way better than earlier. And well, that's about it.